Welcome to School Talk. I'm Dale McGee. The school committee spends a lot of its time looking at budgets, curriculum changes, and test results. But in the end, what really matters is how our students do in the world after they leave school. The school department has spent the last 2 years looking at innovations in learning, developing a portrait of a graduate, and adopting strategic priorities for the next 5 years. During this show, we thought that we would add to this work by seeing what advice some of our graduates who have finished college and have been in the workplace for several years can offer. Stay tuned. Today we are joined by school committee members Aaron Canzano, John Wensky, Jason Palish, and Sandy Fritz. But before we begin our discussion, let's hear from Liz Ford, Matt Armenti, and Priyanka, Dayal, McCluskey, and see what they have to tell us.
My name is Liz Ford. I graduated from Shrewsbury High School in 2011, and I'm currently a pediatric nurse.
Hello, my name is Matthew Armenti. Right now I am working as the branch manager of the new Unibank that just opened up in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts. I graduated Shrewsbury High School in 2008. I'm actually a fourth generation graduate of Shrewsbury High School. My dad went through, and my grandmother and great-grandfather both graduated from Beale when Beale was still the high school.
My name is Priyanka, Dayal, McCluskey. I graduated from Shrewsbury High School in 2003. I went to Boston University, where I double majored in journalism and political science, and now I work as a journalist at the Boston Globe.
One of my favorite things about high school was senior year, being able to pick my classes. I chose to take human anatomy and physiology, which helped reassure me that nursing was what I wanted to do. And I didn't take any AP classes throughout high school, but I still felt definitely prepared and ready when I entered college.
Some of the things that benefited me most from Shrewsbury High School, definitely my level of education. And I will say, coming here working in banking, I definitely felt more prepared than probably some of my peers. Even going into college, I kind of felt that college was more of a review the first couple of years, just based on how much I learned when I was at Shrewsbury High School. And going through, I definitely felt ahead of quite a few of the people that I was actually going to school with. So that was definitely a good thing. Some of the biggest takeaways that I had from Shrewsbury High, and even as I related into my career now, we had teachers that cared and they wanted their students to succeed. And I can remember my freshman year in high school, I had an English teacher who did a whole unit on speech, standing up, talking, giving speeches, and I would sit in class and say, when am I ever going to use this? And she would nitpick, and as all the other students would feel, she's just being mean to us. But at the end of the day, even this year, I've stood up more than once. I've had to give speeches in front of 50+ people, and even through the courses that I took through college, I would definitely say that prepared me the most.
The most valuable part of my experience here at Shrewsbury was I did get challenged academically, which was helpful to prepare me for college and what was to come. I also really am grateful for the music and theater program because it allowed me to do something fun where I also learned, and you don't really have a chance to do so much of that after you leave school.
In Shrewsbury High, I would have liked to see a little bit more help with kids picking careers. I was lucky enough to know that nursing was something I wanted to do, but being able to choose some of my classes senior year was helpful in reassuring me that that's what I wanted to do. But besides picking my own classes, I feel like that was one of my only options to help me reassure that this is what I wanted to do. The other thing that would be helpful would definitely be some more education for the kids about finances. When I was picking my college, finances were a huge impact, but I definitely came to learn that, especially for nursing, it doesn't matter where you go to school. At the end of the day, we all take the same NCLEX, and I was able to make a great college decision with some good financial options for me and still become a great nurse.
One of the biggest challenges, I would say, or one of the things that wasn't developed when I was in school that probably should have been, is the development of a reality fair or some kind of financial literacy. I think it's a great thing that it is integrated into the school now, but back in 2008 when I graduated, there wasn't anybody telling us, if you go to Suffolk University, you're going to pay $100,000 for your education, but you could have gone to Worcester State and you could have spent, half that or a third that. There was no course to kind of go over what credit cards are like, or what having credit card debt might be like, or getting married, having kids, what those expenses might be like, buying a house, having a mortgage, things like that. So, this year I feel privileged to be actually on the planning board for the reality fair that Shrewsbury High is putting on for their entire junior class, and I think that's going to be a fantastic tool for them to be able to see what actually living in the real world is going to be like. And as I said, that's definitely something that I felt that I missed. Being in the financial services industry, I certainly was able to be prepared through my own work experience to know how to manage my money, how to manage my personal finances, what to invest in, what not to invest in. But on the whole, many kids don't actually have that experience unless their parents are taking the time to show them. So I think it's great that they're introducing that in the schools now.
When I was in high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do for my career. I do wish that I had had a little more exposure to the different types of jobs that are out there. I think it would be great if students could kind of meet people in different careers and get ideas about what they might want to do with their lives after leaving school. And I ended up finding my career path once I got to college, and I started working at the student newspaper and realized how much fun it was.
Moving from high school to college was a little bit difficult. When I came to college, I realized that it's a lot more freedom and independence. So my freshman year, I had a hard time with time management, some study skills, and prioritization. But luckily, I was able to figure it all out and learn some good study habits and study skills to be successful in college.
The biggest shock for going from high school to college, it was probably getting out of school and just being in Boston, being in the big city. For me personally, I was seeing things that I probably hadn't seen before. At the university, I would definitely say my junior year especially. Now, I graduated in 3.5 years, so I was definitely accelerated when I was going through. But I wouldn't say so much of a shock because I did feel prepared, but there were definitely some circumstances and some events that, I was not prepared for, specifically when I graduated and I got the bill for school. In addition to having a little bit of credit card debt and, owning a new car and things like that. One of the biggest things for me is I lived on campus my freshman and sophomore year. Junior year, we were in an apartment, and needless to say, commuting expenses and tolls and gas all plays a part. And if I hadn't worked through actually going to school, I probably wouldn't have been able to afford what I was doing.
When I went to college, I felt well prepared. I think I got a good education here at Shrewsbury High. I think I was challenged academically and prepared for how rigorous college and the workplace would be.
When deciding which college to pick, finances are super important, and for me, I was able to find a college that was affordable. In going through school, it made me less stressed knowing that I could graduate, find a good job, and be able to afford my student loan payments and not be stressed out about it and not have to dwell on the fact that I'll be in debt for years. So it was definitely helpful to know about finances and understand the long-term goals of committing to a college.
The biggest piece of advice I would give to current high school students, definitely look at the tuition bills when you're applying for schools. Don't be afraid to say, you know what, I'm going to do a couple of years at Worcester State and then I'll go to the Suffolk University or the Boston University or the Harvard. At the end of the day, these kids are graduating with $50,000, $60,000 plus. Some of them maybe got through a couple of years of college and decided that that's not what they wanted to do, and they're getting hit with these huge bills, and it's just crazy. And then trying to find means to manage it all. I have friends that got out for a little bit, had to move back with their parents because they're trying to pay their college education expenses, and some of them are paying in the upwards of $1,000 to $1,200 a month just for college education. That could have been a house, that could have been a mortgage payment, that could have been their new car, and instead they can't find the jobs in the fields that they majored in. They have to go and get just some job to be able to afford having gone to school. So definitely take the time to do your research. Don't be afraid to start small and get big, because at the end of the day, you might decide that what you initially went to school for wasn't what you wanted to do, and you don't want to sink yourself before you can swim.
I would tell students today that take full advantage of all the opportunities you have now to try all different things. Don't blow off your classes, have fun, and keep an open mind and continue learning even after you leave school. One of the things you learn about in high school is also how to learn, and you have to keep doing that when you leave school and college and in the workplace. And one of the best things about my job now is, as a reporter for the Boston Globe, I get to do research and meet people and learn about new things all the time.
So there was a lot here. And I think that the reassuring thing is much of this was covered during the innovation in learning and the process of developing a portrait of a graduate. But still, they took out the highlighter and took a few of those points and really drove them home. What do you think?
Well, I think that one takeaway that I had was that academically students were certainly prepared, and where we heard that students might have wanted or expected more really had to do with a lot of skills that might usually be developed outside the classroom, choices with regard to finance and career. The perspectives that we heard are, it's interesting, I get to share that perspective. I was a 2007 Shrewsbury High School graduate myself, and I consistently found that in academic senses I was prepared or better prepared than a lot of students I went to a collegiate setting with, and I really didn't feel like that was particularly difficult. I felt like I was well prepared to learn, but it's things outside of that setting that we might want to consider as a school committee. How are we preparing kids for some of those decisions?
One of the things I'd like to add on about that is their focus on good teachers and how they felt like teachers really cared about their success. So, and that was interesting to find out that they carried those teachers and what the teachers taught them into college and saw the value of our teachers here in Shrewsbury.
So academically, our students are well prepared.
Absolutely.
They're ready for college, which is very reassuring. By the same token, if I can think of one abrupt change that seems to occur, if I were to interview a bunch of juniors in high school and ask them about choosing a college, I'm not sure that cost would rise to the top. But as we listen to these students here, the issue of finance was pretty high on their list.
I think we're seeing the students who graduated in the piece we just watched was earlier. And
Right.
When we're looking at college tuitions, I think the last was 2011, college tuitions in 2018 are significantly more. So what they're saying is even compounded further for the students coming out today. When you go on college tours, they do talk a lot about finance. It's something that the colleges do put out. So I think, we have to reinstill with our parents and our students about the cost of education. And it's a very personal decision for students to make. And I think they have to weigh, is it the right school? Is it the right cost? Sometimes there's a blend of the two. But I think we need to help students understand debt and future costs of life as they go forward, including that
And
whole college
I think
piece.
we're doing a better job at that. I've
Yes.
had 3 children go through right now. My youngest is a senior, so her junior year, certainly she knew that the colleges she was looking at the price tag, just like my oldest was. There is more of a concentration on it in the high school through guidance or just actually between conversations between other students. They're aware of how long it's going to take them to pay off the debt. They may not fully understand what they're signing, and when they're coming to loans, there's still more work to be done. But I do think that there's been a shift from, let's say, 2011, which was
Moving in
one
the
of
right
the
direction.
And I think across all 3 students, we heard that financial literacy piece being such an important thing for them to understand as they get into college, not just from a school loan perspective, but the types of expenses you can incur, whether you're living on campus or off campus, and kind of helping them understand how to manage that. So.
Well, the other piece here is that they were pointing out that when you go to college, a proportionately larger amount of the education is your own responsibility, as opposed to high school where the teacher makes a difference. The curriculum makes a difference. In college, you're kind of, a lot of it is you. And so that means that they have to be organized, they have to be focused and have set goals. But it also means that where they're going to college may not matter as much as they may think.
Right.
And the concept you get what you pay for may not be true.
Right.
But you may be able to do some bargain
That's a good
hunting
point.
and come away with a good education.
Right.
And just as Mr. Armenti said, you can save a lot of money and use it for something else.
Right. And they tied in occupation to thinking about what they want to do when they get to college. And we know you're 18, you probably really don't know exactly what.
Right.
Some people are fortunate.
Sure.
Like the girl said, I want to be a nurse all along. But if you don't know, you have to be able to pick a school that has a broad enough
That's
array of majors. And I think we when we've talked about doing this, reaching out to the community, having people in different fields come in and talk about what it's like to work in certain fields, what the career path is like, what the salary is like.
Sure.
So when they get to college, they can decide, is really that what I want?
Yeah, bringing more career focus into the classroom in high school as much as we can on
Sure.
that long list of items that needs to get done in the classroom.
Right.
But also, we saw with the high school curriculum for next year, job shadowing is coming into focus.
That's right.
So, what can that do for the students to expose them to careers early on, to help them make that decision, potentially early in high school. Maybe it's something they want to do, or maybe something they want to look at.
Right.
Look at something else down the road.
Right.
And paradoxically, and we know when you're that age, it's a little bit tough to figure out what do you want to do with the rest of your
absolutely.
life. But what you study in college is going to matter a lot more than where you study for college. Right. And to that point, I think that when we focus in K through 12 education on skills development, giving kids the skills that they need to be learners and to acquire the information and the skills that they need when they might not know when that's going to be is critical. Not only has the world changed over the last 20 or 30 years, but the pace of that change is getting more and more rapid. Exactly. We don't know what the economy 20 years from now is going to look like. We don't know what the economy 10 years from now is going to look like. So the best way that we can prepare kids comes down to giving them the skill sets that they need to be effective learners. Because just like they might not know at 17, 18 years of age, what do they want to do with the rest of their careers, we can't necessarily tell them what is the job market going to look like in the year 2030.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And those characteristics of creativity, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and curiosity that we talk about so much. I heard one educational analyst say, if we look at the tests that we administer and the content knowledge that they test for, if you're highly successful in those things, if rote memory is really good for you, you're basically being prepared for a job that you can be replaced by a robot. And that it's those characteristics that we're trying to emphasize now are the ones that are going to prepare people for the resilience that they need for the workplace.
Right. We talk a lot about critical thinking. To me, in the workplace, we want the new people to come in to really be critical thinkers and not to look at the problem in the same way that maybe I did 10 years ago. Like, how can we do things better, smarter, and in a different way to meet customers' needs? And I think having them gain that in school, really critical thinking, real world problem solving will really help them regardless of what they study.
And another essential skill, Dayal used the word resiliency. Resiliency unto itself is going to be an important skill, because in the creative economy, it's not that there's a right or a wrong answer either overall or in a particular job. It's a lot of trial and error, and it's a lot of failing, and it's the ability to reapply yourself. So that too is an important skill.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, and we also mentioned about how many careers a person is going to have during their lifetime, and what we were hearing is that people make changes during college.
Right.
And so having the ability to pivot and recognize when something is not right for you and make some changes is an important trait to have as well.
Absolutely.
And so we talked about finance. We looked at, now this career exposure piece, I think, is another very interesting thing. We talk a lot also about project-based learning. We also talk about the fact that many students look at some of these subjects that may not inherently appeal to them and say, what am I taking this for? And I think that some career exposure puts things in context and allows people to see why they may be learning something that they hadn't appreciated before.
Yeah, I think there's only so much you can learn inside a classroom, and with whatever curriculum that you're focused on. I think exposure to careers early on, and even incorporating the project-based learning to help them become more creative thinkers, as opposed to just looking up the solution like everyone else can. I think is very important.
We run into the problem at the high school level of scheduling. Like, how do you get a student out of the classroom into a real world situation when you're, it's 7:30 to 2 o'clock? I know colleges are better suited to internships and real world experiences that give students an idea, but I wonder if there's something we can replicate on a smaller scale that would help students.
In the virtual high school, I think is another great program that we have, and it's really about 25 slots, I think, each semester. So only 50 students can really do that exploration. To me, that's an area I wish we had more opportunity for students. Again, we run into budget issues when how much we can add in. There's
Right.
scheduling issues,
Right.
but that's another great area.
Yeah.
And just as we strive to offer students as much choice as possible, there's still the essential fact that not only is curriculum largely set at the state level, but there's a lot of value to the broad range of skills. As someone who was always interested in the social sciences at a young age, I never appreciated how much statistics and mathematics, which I absolutely hated, were going to play in that. And so when you don't necessarily know
True.
at a young
Right.
age what it is you're interested in, you also don't necessarily know which broader skill sets are and are not going to be essential. So that broad framework that we give to kids still has a place
Yes.
Right.
in the high school setting.
Right.
So other things that I think are interesting have to do with the fact that the living alone kind of piece came up there, and the fact that they were just confronted with a lot of judgments and a lot of experiences that they hadn't seen before was the gentle way
That's
of putting
right.
it. But that was something for us to think about with regard to what they want and what they may need. It's hard to know where to draw the line between things that we expect people to learn at home
Sure.
Right.
versus obligations of the school
schools,
system,
exactly.
or where we can provide some value. And I guess that's another question that comes up fairly often.
Right. I think they get to college. I have my own too. They have to learn to do things on their own.
Right.
We all did. But I think one thing we do to prepare students is we help them time manage. We help them know how to have a schedule and a plan and figure out what they need to do to get work done. So I think when they leave Shrewsbury High, they're going with a good, at least study habits.
Yeah.
The rest, that's up to, I think that's more of a,
Well, that's where the
Gamble.
social emotional piece that
That's
we're
true.
talking about,
Yeah.
that this idea of resiliency or having a growth mindset instead of the fixed mindset. So if you fail, it's not the end of the world.
and tools, they learn tools how to
That's
deal
right.
with that.
So again, focusing still on social emotional at all levels would be beneficial to students
point.
leaving.
And some of this comes from a very good place too. When you're a student at Shrewsbury High School, you are in a place where there are many, many adults who are deeply invested in your success. They're paying attention to you. They know who you are. They want you to succeed. They're helping you at all turns. And that is always going to contribute to when you get out there on your own and you're one of a couple dozen or a couple hundred kids. That's always going to be an adjustment. But I also think there's a slant in which that speaks well of the community that they're coming from.
Right.
Wow. So what should we take from this with regard to thinking about education in the future in Shrewsbury? What would we like to see a little bit more of?
I just chime in that I think that projects like Portrait of a Graduate, doing those regularly and consistently, maybe looking at the portrait on a regular basis, revising it as needed. What struck me, and Sandy alluded to this a little bit, between graduates from 2003, 2008, and 2011, which seems like a relatively small amount of
Right.
time, to now even, there are pretty drastic
Just
differences
changes.
in their
Yeah.
experiences.
Right.
Like we talked earlier about the pace of change increasing. We have a profile or a portrait of a graduate now that's not necessarily the portrait of a graduate 30 years from now.
That's right.
This is work that we're going to have to continue to do consistently. We want to continue to have conversations like this with former students where we engage them on an ongoing basis.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the other piece here is that not all of our students go on to college, and not all of our students graduate from college. Roughly 1 in 6, 1 in 7 of the students who leave Shrewsbury High and go on to college don't graduate. And roughly 5 or 6% who graduate don't go on to any form of higher education. So we need to think about them as well. We need to think of making sure that they are well prepared. One thing that comes up with some frequency has to do with the availability of quality vocational training,
Yep.
Yes.
or perhaps whether there may be opportunities after high school for training in the trades that would provide needed education for some of our students, and that certainly is something else for us to pursue as time goes on.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
breaking that mold of the one size fits all, always looking at college as the solution after high school and exposing them to the other opportunities and vocations that are out there.
Right.
Right. And I think especially vocational training is so important, and there are students who are trying to get in. Personally, I think at the state level they need to look harder at adding more vocational schools. I know they're very expensive to build, but they don't have enough slots
Right.
within the state for students who want to go.
Right. Worcester's waiting list is as large as its student body, and only half of the students we have who apply to vocational school get in right
Right.
now. So there certainly is a situation here where the demand is exceeding the supply, and it's
Absolutely.
something else for us to think about. One of the characteristics of the profile of a graduate is global citizenship and awareness. And I notice that just recently there's been some legislation that is passing dealing with civics and mandating certain levels of civics education in schools. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that it's clear that while we may not, again, know the specifics of the world a few years from now, that no matter what sort of career field our students enter into, they're going to have to be collaborating and working in a team setting a lot more. And I think that that speaks to students' broader relationships with their communities and their society. Do they feel like they might be isolated, like they're going to go off and do their own thing, or do they feel like they're a part of a broader community? And I think civics education actually relates back to that, understanding the world around you, understanding all of our roles as a citizen in a free democratic society. What does that actually mean? And I think it dovetails nicely with the fact that whatever the jobs are of tomorrow, you're not going to be standing in a line or sitting by yourself behind a computer just doing things of your own volition. You're going to be working collaboratively with other people. You're going to be part of a community one way or the other.
Yeah, very important in any work setting that even if you're an individual contributor, you're part of a broader team.
Right.
And you all have to understand, try to get on the same page and understand what each job focus is within that particular company. I think we even heard it in the last clip about public speaking and the importance of that, and
That's right.
and leading a group to help them understand what the overall goal is. So collaboration is so critical in the workplace.
The ability to communicate. And I've been extremely impressed with the presentations we've seen from students and everything. They're
From all
professional
ages.
level. In the 7th grade, we've seen
Right.
professional level presentations. So it's
Actually, the kindergarten counting program was a little intimidating. I couldn't do that when I was 5.
Jumping.
No, I couldn't do that.
Right.
okay. All right. Well, in sum, we heard basically that students who have graduated sometime in the past wanted a little bit more in the way of career exposure, career guidance. They wanted a lot more in the way of finance and sort of living skills outside of school. And they also wanted to make sure that students in school now realize that they may be adapting their career plans. They should also be prepared for a life where they were continually being educated and possibly reevaluating their careers. So there was a lot of very useful advice that we have here. And so I would like to thank Liz Ford and Matt Armenti and Priyanka, Dayal McCluskey for helping us with this show. And good evening.